Grade Center. In this video, we will learn how to access the Grade Center in Blackboard. We will learn about the different types of Grade Center columns, including the default columns, the automatically created columns, and the manually created columns. We will also learn how to enter grades and how to hide a column from students. You can use the Grade Center in Blackboard to manage students' grades. To access the Grade Center in a specific course, scroll down to Course Management, Control Panel, and under Grade Center, click Full Grade Center. This is the Full Grade Center page. It contains a grid with several rows and columns. Every row represents a student. The Grade Center comes with some default columns. The first 6 columns are called user columns, and they contain information about the student, like last name, first name, username, student ID, last access, and availability. You cannot delete these columns, but you can hide some of them if you want to. You can scroll to the right to see more columns. We have weighted total. You can customize this column to calculate the total grade differently. You have the total, and this column will add grades from all other columns and have the result here. If you scroll more, you can see more columns, and these columns were actually created automatically. Some of the Grade Center columns will be created automatically when you add a specific activity or tool to your students, like assignments, blogs, discussions. When you add any graded activity, a column will be added to the Grade Center. So these columns were created when I added blogs earlier. And all these yellow icons represent a submission that needs to be graded. This 5 here means that I have already graded this activity, and I gave it the mark 5. The yellow icon represents that a submission is ready and it needs grading. This blue icon means that the attempt is in progress, so the student is working on this activity but still did not submit it. These cells are empty, which means there is no submission from students in these columns. For these automatically created columns, I can go to any submission and create it directly from the Grade Center just by moving my mouse to this cell that contains the icon which represents that the activity has been submitted. You click this arrow, and here you can click Grade User Activity. And this will take you to a page. For example, this was a blog, and this will take me to the page that contains the students' participation and submission. I can review the students' participation. I can put a grade here, and I can also give my feedback here. So let's give a grade, and in this case I'm going to give a grade of 3. I can give a comment if needed. I can attach a file. I can comment on the activity here, and I can also submit. And then OK. Notice now that the grade has been posted in the students' column. Also, by moving your mouse on top of the grade and clicking this arrow next to the score, you have this View Grade Details option. And this will bring you to this page where you can also grade the user activity here. You can clear the grade, and you can also edit the grade. So if I just want to change the grade for this student, I can click this option and I can change the grade here. So for example, 3.5. I can add my comments to the learner or the student. I can add some notes, and that's only for the instructor, and click Save. The student grade has changed, but all the grades will be saved in the grade history. So you can come at any time and see the history of the grade from this option here, Grade History. And as you can see that the grade was 3, and then it was changed to 3.5. You can just click this option, Return to Grade Center, to go back to the Grade Center. And we can see that the new grade has been posted here. For any assessment that you are doing outside Blackboard, you can just create the column manually. To do so, from the Grade Center main page, go to the first menu item, Create Column, and fill here the column information. Anything with a star is mandatory. So for example, if I'm doing a midterm exam on paper, not in Blackboard, I can come and create the column here. So give the column name midterm. You have some options here. I'm gonna keep the primary display to be a score. Secondary display, you can choose to have a secondary display, for example, to have it as a letter or percentage, and that will appear in parentheses just for you, not for the student. I'm not going to choose this here. You can also set a category, and this is optional, to have it as a test or an exam or whatever. And you need to set the point. So for a midterm exam, I can say I want to mark it out of 30. We can add a rubric optionally. We will talk about this in other sessions. We can add a due date that can be added to the calendar for the students, but it's not mandatory. You have here some important options. Include this column in Grade Center calculations. By default, this is set to yes, which means that the mark in this column will be added to the total column. Show this column to students. By default, it's yes. So students will see the grade immediately after I post it. If you don't want the students to see it immediately, you can just click no and come and change it later when you want to post the grades to students. Show statistics to students. This is by default is set to no, and you can just keep it to no, except in some special cases where you want the students to know the average and the medium and the highest and lowest grades in the class. I'm going to keep the default. So after setting the column information, which is mainly the name of the column, the points, and if you want to change any of these options, you just click submit. And you will notice that a column has been added to the end of the table. Here it is midterm. So a column has been added to my grade center. Currently there are no grades. Now I can input the grades manually. Once I have graded my midterm, I can come and grade my grades out of 30. Remember, this is out of 30. If you forget what it is, you can always come to this arrow and either click edit column information to change any of the information that you have selected here, or if you just want to view that information, you can also click this arrow and choose quick column information, and that will give you a quick look at what's inside, the name of the column, how many points out of 30, it's a score, and so on. Close the menu. And now I can easily start entering my grades. So out of 30, I can just give grades, and by clicking enter, this grade is saved. If the column is visible to students, then they can see the mark immediately. If I don't want the students to see the marks while I'm grading, I can also change this from inside. Remember here, edit column information, and change this option to no. Show this column to students, I make it no and submit. Or from the header of the column, click this arrow and you have this option, hide from students, on off. If I click this option, now I can see this mark on the column header with this red line. It means that this column now is hidden from students. So while I'm entering grades, the students cannot see the grade of this exam. So I'm going to continue entering my grades. Now I have finished entering the grades. Students cannot see this column. Grades are saved. Of course, I can come back and edit any of these grades at any time. So for example, if I want to change this 18, I can just click here and type change it and enter the new grade and enter, and the new grade will be saved. If you don't want the students to know these grades at all, it's not enough to just hide the column, because the students can see the total marks. So if you notice here, now I'm going back to the total column, and as you see, the total column contains the total grades. It adds whatever is in these columns. So here this student has 5, and has 21 and has 3.5. So the total in the total column is 29.5. So the student can actually guess how much they have taken in the midterm exam. So if you don't want the students to know at all what's their grade, you can also hide the total column also by clicking here. As you see, you don't have this option in the menu. If you can't find the option of the menu to hide the column from students, you can edit column information, and in the options here, choose no for show this column to students and submit. And this red line has been added, which shows that this column is already hidden from students.